Good morning. Today is the 15th of November, and I am in the Tribog area. Had some thoughts. I could never make one of these without a plane flying overhead. Anyway, I had thoughts of going to Vermont yesterday, but I looked at I cheat and look at the highway maps, and I saw snow, which means there's going to be some inherent access limitations. Sounds like a cop-out, maybe it is, but I'm here instead, following up on some stuff from last week. And trying to divide up a pattern, or what's the right word? A systematic approach of pattern sweeps through this area as the areas up there kind of dry up, because after the 31st of next month they close all the gates, which limits things as well, unless you're willing to snowshoe like 5-6 miles, which you can do, but it's insane. But you need to prepare for that kind of thing too. So that's what we're going to do today, and we'll see what happens and see what we find. Come on along, and let's get moving. Observation for the day. I don't know if we were here last week. This is obviously not new by way of beaver shit from the coloration in the wood, but not sure if this was standing or not last week. Looks new for some reason. Making a note of it for comparison with last week's video when I go back and review that when I get home and look at that. I'm also a little ticked off at myself because in the course of getting out and having some so noted birdie confusion on what my timing for getting out today was going to be. Long story short, I was thinking I might be patching servers with my job today. That plane is just going to circle all day, isn't it? Patching servers for my job, but turns out due to some considerations of conflicting maintenance, we have that put out a couple of weeks, and it is what it is. So we'll catch up with that when we catch up with that. We will be delayed in leaving a few weeks from now, but this week was not interfered with, long story short. So not that you care, but a little insight into why. It's also a lot of why I didn't really plan on a trip to Vermont, because if I was doing that this morning, I wouldn't have been able to leave until later in the morning, and that just, without a long weekend, it's not really a feasible use of time. So we are going to take a picture of this because I just like to compare it over the seasons. It's just a thing I do, and kind of monitor the beaver ponds over there from a forestry point of view. I've never seen anyone use that canoe, but somebody took the time and trouble to haul a canoe all the way in from way the hell over there, which I find amusing, but I've never seen anyone actually do that. But if you look very closely at those 4 sticks next to it, that's actually like a campsite set up for some wannabe bushcrafters, which I think is kind of cool. If ever I get bored with the Bigfoot thing, I'll still be out here probably doing shit like that more, because I just find that kind of thing interesting, and it's also a hell of a peaceful freaking spending of time in the middle of nowhere. Alone with your manly thoughts and all that happy bullshit. Anyway, we're going to get moving, and I am going to ponder if there's any items for discussion. The gossip of last week, the stuff from Oklahoma, much as I despise the guy that runs the group, he kind of put a cap on it, and it wasn't really going anywhere. Apparently, the guy that runs the podcast known as The Tall Ones, usually pretty good. Nothing really bad to say about the podcast. He apparently was accused by the hoaxer, if he is a hoaxer, Jason Phillips. Again, I don't know this guy really well, but all last week he had a bug up his derriere, claiming that somebody had accused him of stolen valor, that he didn't have military record, and he spent the whole week trying to defend he was in the military. And if you were, I don't remember reading where somebody said you weren't, but if you were, I am willing to take your word for it if you have the goods to prove it. Although it's not really my business one way or the other. But that's really the latest on that. And the guy running the thing trying to play the role of archivist here, and he's not really the antagonist in this. He runs the group, and the other guy the tall one's guy brought the dirty laundry, and as much as it doesn't directly involve him that I'm aware of, it does cover some things that he's not wrong. It's just a morass of finger pointing between Jason Phillips and this Grassman dude named Cliff, who I also know from a hole, no, not at all from a hole in the wall. So I'm not, for the record, casting judgment on either two of these individuals because I simply just don't know them. In my travels in Bigfootery and the land thereof, I simply just haven't encountered these two. They're from the West Coast, which is probably why, and if they're lesser known guys from there, it's all too possible that I don't know them because I don't follow the exploits of everybody anymore. There's just too much random invented bullshit nonsense out there, and I just can't be bothered anymore to keep track of it all. I focus on my own shit, which a lot of people probably could stand to do, but regardless, the takeaways are effectively Randy Harrington has a history of backstabbing pretty much anyone he deals with. And again, I will not use his name, but there's a person who researches in areas not far from here who went out to spend time in their 400 setup, who he has backstabbed. And he will say so himself, but I literally read Randy Harrington's comments about this individual. I have been in the woods with this same individual, and I've never seen him do anything sketchy, shady, or anything like that. So, considering that Randy has had a role in the now painfully, repetitively mentioned bullet faker hoax and the freaking Daisy in a clamshell nonsense with Ed Smith and his a Ridge 6 Team Contra bullshit. I find that whole period of history very funny because in the here and now, he points fingers at Darren Lee. Darren Lee points fingers at him. Nobody denies it was a hoax, though. And everybody's claiming freaking credit for busting the hoax and pointing fingers at the other person for being part of the hoax. The reality is, I was in a ringside seat for that realm of history, and the fact is, every person pointing fingers was involved in that fucking hoax. Every single one of you was guilty of that crap. It was a circus. There's not really a better freaking way to describe it. It was literally a freaking circus. And for the record, I just don't take anyone from that group seriously. You can't. There's another guy whose last name is Whitehead who has a long history of posting these Bigfoot tracks that are like 3 feet long, and you think Mighty Joe Young is stomping around out here looking to not be found. And I'm sorry, if you had something that big eating stuff out here, he would be leaving a distinctive footprint in the biome of the area. That's just simple hard science. But whatever, Jim. Believe what you want as long as you're having fun, dumbass. So, last week, I also covered that the whatever Steve Culls has brewing, he pumped the brakes because apparently some people were getting too conjectural with what was going on, and he used the word scuttlebutt, so the rumors were flying, and a little gentle rap on the wrist of like, maybe you let out too much titillation too soon. And then you took the corrective action of pumping the brakes and kind of like clarifying and slowing down, because the one thing he did say that I do agree with is that science done right takes time, and too many samples of too many DNA claims have been corrupted by poor handling by people that quite honestly don't know how to do that right. There's a way to do it, there's a way not to do it, and by no means am I claiming to be an expert. What I can say, though, is there are DNA kits out there from scientific companies, like scientific supply companies, as well as DNA companies. There's like eDNA. There's 2 different companies that do that. I did look that up. If you're going to go and invest in your own kit, I still suspect you have to go to a lab or someone to have it properly analyzed, because I don't have that but I'm not going to claim that I have that scientific skill set, because I don't. That would be a misrepresentation of what I know how to do. If I know how to do something or I've been exposed to it, I will give an honest assessment of what I do and don't know, and when I need to escalate to a level of greater expertise, that is what you do. In that case, I'd be opting just to go to the lab directly, because they know that stuff, I do not. So, anyway, moving right along, I think he was right, though, in slowing down the pace on that. Not just because it's better scientific protocol, but because there are so many entitled little brats in the fucking community that think they're owed something in the way of new information. And my answer to that has always been, I know that the newer generations want to be spoon-fed, because that's what a lot of them have had for an experience growing up. But you need to get up off your ass and go out into the world and have your own experiences and learn for yourself. That's how you retain information. And I just saw something move over there. What was that? Possibly a trick of lighting or a small animal. There's definite signs of animal. I'm not saying Bigfoot. I'm just saying you have. The funny thing, I have a bug up my dairy. Oh, you know what? It's a log that's moving. If you look at it, it looks like it might be like a turkey or something. It's not. Bug up my wazoo is the Connecticut DEEP, the equivalent of a DNR, would have you believe there are ruffled grouse in Connecticut. You see me get out in the woods every day, and a lot of this shit is prime habitat for. I have never seen a single one. So, they're either overly optimistic in their population levels, or I am just not in the right neighborhood to be seeing them. Because if I did, I would probably be going through the trouble of getting my bow hunting license here, because otherwise it's a pain in the ass. And all I'm gunning for is turkey. I have seen them out here, but it's the weirdest thing. They're not as dumb as they look, because when you enter into turkey season, the week before and the week after it's over, you'll see them everywhere. In between, they become ghosts. But anyway, those are the two bits of recap gossip. The pine cone gathering situation from last week remains suspected to be somebody putting them in their wood stove, because when I saw somebody doing that, they gathered up a like amount that I saw gathered here, and for somebody to haul them all out, they must have a use for them. They're not hurting anything. It literally is foraging. They were foraging the dead ones off the ground and waited till they opened up, like the guy was demonstrating on YouTube on how to do this properly. And it is the most likely reason why somebody would be doing these things out here. Why they chose way out there, I don't know, because in my wanderings in here, you have patches of the various ones where they have fallen and they're just as usable. Maybe they found those too, but I'm following a deer. You keep seeing these deer pellets. And that's why when I said I thought I saw something moving. A deer can blend in with these low, youngish pines well enough that they're going to be looked over easily enough if they hold still. If you're just moving around and you don't realize he's there, you could miss him because they do blend in that well. That's their, which is also why cloaking Bigfoot is bullshit. Because it's nothing more exotic than animals blending into the coloration around them. And for a Squatch to be doing that, they literally wouldn't really have to do anything else other than just stop and hold still and look like a dead tree stump or something. Because you have things like this, and in the distance, if you had a Squatch that tall, he just kind of, poses a certain way, because they are, from everything I've encountered, the few times I've seen them, I consider them to be differently intelligent, as in they're as smart as we are in terms of being able to maneuver this environment. They're the apex because they know this like the back of their hand because they're out here every day. We are not. If you ran into a fucking Neanderthal living out here back in their age, they'd probably be a whole lot smarter in their environment than we would be too. They probably had all kinds of weird little forest wizardry skills that we have forgotten a long time ago because we simply we went a different way. Whereas they probably blended in with their environment. All right, I'm going to take a brief segment break and hop the stream and go into a direction, maybe that way today, up the middle. And, which would put me on the left of the whatchamacallit, the laurel patch. Damn branch just tried to take my glasses. So I'm going to do that and we'll be back in a bit. Okay, we're back. We are potentially near a clearing after covering some ground. And we're going to check that out. I don't know that I've been in this particular stretch of woods before. It seems to open up a little bit. So we are past the laurel patch over there, which is, I may have been out this way a while back, but it's again been a while, so it's not totally familiar. And this does look like it opens up. So we are going to attempt a relative straight line and see what this is. Half expecting that if I do pop out on this, it might connect with an area I'm familiar with coming from the other direction over that way. Which would technically mean I've overlanded this entire area. Not that it's huge, but it's... When I make reference to knowing the land, much of that you do by walking straight through it. And knowing your way around. So I'm going to get to this little hill over here. Either get a vantage point or see if this is just a clearing mirage where it opens up because the ground level gets lower, which is also possible. We're going to start over here because that looks like a little valley that opens up into something. Might give you a better vantage point. Then I'll do kind of a parallel if this is a clearing, because then it'll be easier to place on a map after the fact. That goes into more laurel. So if I do my intended patch over here, all right, so before we go too far, that's the way back. I just have to not go in a crazy straight line to get turned around in here, because I have done that before. But I also have the wetland over there I can use. I'm going to go as far as in there, and it does look like it opens up though. But if it's deception, I'm going to turn around and fall back a little ways, and then maybe proceed in a different direction once I have affirmative bearing. But this definitely is looking like it opens up. I just want to see if I can get a glimpse of where this goes. I'm willing to bet this is probably that opening or that wetland we were at a few weeks ago. I just want to get a glimpse. Not the most efficient way to go through, but I suspect that I'm right. Okay. Given the lack of other big wetlands out here, there's only so many it can be. And considering the boat launch areas way over there, probably a decent ways off, but over there, that's most likely what this is. So we overlanded. And then there's another one over there I'm not going to hit today, but okay. We have settled my curious hash. We're going to start heading back. Ironically going the hard way back, but wasn't too bad actually. When I get home, I have to then kind of open up the map and kind of figure out where I was, and I need to actually not deviate from my less than perfect path, mainly because if I do, then I'm going to end up at an angle where I may not end up where I want. And that is counterproductive. I did not plan on getting lost today, so even though arguably right now I'm not totally familiar with this particular stretch of woods and am kind of memorizing landmarks like that rock right there and slowly making our way back, which if I do in a relatively straight line, I should be all right. So I want to say 4 years ago, I think I came through here doing a similar kind of thing, going to the other wetland, which is much smaller than that one. That's why I know that's not the one it is. And because it was like long and skinny, we'd be hitting it at the skinny angle. Whereas the only other one that's big is the bog that actually comes in from the the area that's all the northern portion of the Tri-Bog area. Then we wander back and find our way around the laurel patch. Worst case scenario, I could probably hook onto the trail there, walk out on the trail, and walk back the long way, but I don't really want to do that. If only because it's more fun to overland and know what kind of weird shit's in the middle of everything. And that is effectively what we're doing. As for anything else going on in the land of bigfooting silliness, those are the two big items I'm aware of. And there is a loudmouth in the Coral Coalition who is kind of the epitome of why going there is kind of a pointless exercise, because all the guy basically does is scream Bigfoot doesn't exist in caps all the time. And that's pretty much the meat and the gravy of a conversation with a guy. So, meh. All right, we're near the wetlands, so we're not going to get... Like I said, the area is not so huge. You're going to get lost. You're going to come up to the stone wall at some point, at some angle. And then you just follow that down the hill back to the stream. Just kind of angling through the laurel, which I think I was on the other side of. And let's see what the easiest way through the laurel patch is. I'm going to kind of parallel over here, because I think the overall path through is going to be more open this way. Save me some grief of going through this shit, but it basically opens up on either side. I'm just trying to replicate my journey to and then now fro, and make sure that we're effectively where we think we are. I mean, we're not so far into a big area, so huge. I mean, the pond is over there, so if we need to concede defeat, just go to a known landmark and pop out that way. We can, but I'm still kind of wanting to keep this fairly honest and the like. But let's bang through this. I will just say, though, that there's a good chance I may pop out at an angle I didn't expect, but that big opening there is the wetland, so we're not that far off. I'm just going to make an effort to go. All right, the way through, though. There might be a deviation like that. All right, well, I'm going to take a segment break because I might need to do some maneuvering, which is going to be easy to do hands-free. As always, we'll be back in a bit once I navigate through this wee little maze and come out to the other side and probably be more familiar with where I am. We'll be back in a bit. Okay, we're back. We're on the other side of the stream again. I wanted to kind of focus on navigation because I highly doubt, as I aim the gun to the foot, I could get too lost in here. Because the overall area, much like the other one, ultimately if you can go in a relatively straight line, I preface by saying you can't go in a straight line because you have things in your way. But if you can kind of zigzag in a relatively straight line, maintaining the same general direction, you're going to come out on some marker of civilization or a familiar landmark. And in Connecticut, the cheat again are these things, these stone walls. If you can memorize the directional order of the ones you did, if you're going way the hell in a bigger area, you're going to be that much better at knowing where you are, relatively speaking. Now, this one comes to what I call the corner. And as long as nobody moves that, you have that log as kind of a confirmation with this little kind of corral thing. And the by total contrast, you have the pond over there, bog 1. Bog 2 is over there. And if you overland like we just did, technically bog number 3 is way the hell over there. Although it's not really that long. If you go further to the east, there is a northeast actually, there's a long skinny little one, little opening slash wetland meadow that is further out there. And because it is smaller, it's easier to miss if you approach it at the wrong angle, but it's still big enough you'll see like an opening like that, so you know, relatively speaking, where you are, what you've trekked through. But I'm kind of playing in my head worst case scenario because I'm remembering when I did get turned around at an area that's over the hill, what we call the foothills here, and I ended up managing to get turned around for 90 minutes or so because the danger of arrogance is you walk out, and since I have a visual, if the pond was not there, you'd know you're not there. In an area this large, easier said than done to get turned around because there's also a like logging access road over there. And when I say over there, I mean like within 200 yards. So, I mean, if you walk in a short distance, you're not going to get lost in this. In case anyone ever wondered if I seemed like I was pretty confident in here. That said, the day that I got lost, I hit a point where you didn't have obvious markers and everything started looking the same. And as I gauged my knowledge of the immediate vicinity, the immediate scenery, I had to realize I genuinely did not know what direction to go in, because the compass I had was a little piece of shit thing you got from like a $5 survival kit. Don't use those because they don't work half the time. If you have one that does work, you're lucky. And when I got home, I actually found the good one that I would have used, and that was just kind of like the kick in the derriere to kind of guide home the mistakes I made, which were pretty brazenly... That's geese. Pretty brazenly stupid. They were dumb mistakes, pretty much. And so I'm trying to apply that in here. So to do that in here, realistically, you would have to be like on the one side of the laurel patch where we were, way the hell over there, and take a weird angle and then just have everything look the same. And even then, there's a winding trail system that you would eventually hit if you kept going generally northeast. There's a large wetland over to the far side, so technically it's a quad bog if you go all the way out that way. And you've covered a decent amount of ground if you hit that. And I say that not saying it's impossible, because when I got to a point in the other situation, I got lost and I realized where I was. It was painfully obvious that I had bumbled my way all the way down the mountainside. Granted, it's a foothill, but I basically had gone through the roughest terrain and taken the hardest route remotely possible. But within 45 minutes to an hour, I had still found a trail that looked familiar enough that gut instinct took over. And you can also see there's like a little bit of a moose trail or a hunter trail through here that you can follow back, which in the winter is even easier because then you just follow your tracks. But even when the interesting thing there was when when I hit the trail and my gut instinct started to kick in, first of all, if I'd gone the way I was going, which was the wrong way, I still would have eventually hit something that was familiar. But the weird thing is my gut feeling kicked in hard and like you're going the wrong way. Turn around. And I listened to my gut, and sure enough, I went about a quarter mile and came out near a lean-to that was a known landmark. And then I knew where I was, and I knew I had a ways to call. I had probably a good 90-minute trek back to my car, but I knew where I was. And at least then you had a bit of a plan, because when you don't have that plan and you are at a thorough loss for where the hell you are, your mind is not only not in the game. There was a Survivor Man episode where they did an SAR, and Les Stroud was discussing the sense of dread and panic you feel. And I've mentioned this before, but I can tell you from personal experience, even if it was only for 5 minutes when I roughly got myself to calm down, that was really difficult to stave that feeling off, because your gut feeling is to just panic, pick a direction, and run, which is not the right answer, believe it or not. And the sense of relief I felt when I saw the damn lean-to and realized I knew where I was, and I actually wasn't going to sleep out there in drizzling, freaking increasingly dangerous rain. Let's be honest. Hypothermia was becoming increasingly a realistic threat, and mainly because, again, through my own stupid arrogance, I didn't wear what I should have. And I could have paid for a really shit, I don't know, I mean, I would have kept moving just to keep I'd rather be a miserable, sleep-deprived cuss in the middle of nowhere than try to hunker down and hope that my body doesn't give up to hypothermia over the night, because more than one person has actually died out here from exposure. And just because you don't think it'll happen to you, again from personal experience, hypothermia is so damn dangerous because it's so damned easy to underestimate. So I would have been better off just to keep moving, to keep some element of blood flow going, because at least then you have that false hope you're still moving. If you give up and you hunker down for the night and gets miserable, that is not the better answer, I don't think. So, kind of a little flashback to that bit of fun and games, but we had an overland. It was quiet today, but one of my preliminary goals of doing this area on a frequent basis is, again, getting to know the land. We actually connected some dots in the map today, so that is a step in the right direction. Probably not the most exciting content, but in the grand scheme of things, it is not unhelpful. So until next time, we're going to call this one here. Like, subscribe, leave commentary, suggestions, death threats if you must, and we will catch you on the flip side of this thing. The sun is taking a powder. It was sunnier when I got here. But until next time, bye.